Good evening all, and welcome to our Year 10 Work Experience Information evening. I hope you can hear me well. We haven't done an evening like that, or I haven't for a while, so I hope it's all fine. I'm joined tonight by our career leader, Mrs. Desai, and by Julia Hallam and Kate Barrow from the Educational Business Partnership, the EBP. So I've been at the school for 20 years now, and we've always sent our Year 10 or our Year 11 onto work experience, apart from 2019, which for obvious reasons was the first year of the COVID. Last year, we've managed to send 2 cohorts to catch up with the time, and that's created a lot of work for Julia, for Claire, and for Kate. A lot of schools have actually stopped running work experience because of cost, because of organization, because of the challenges it creates. You can imagine that it's not now easy to find placements, for instance, where a lot of people work from home. But we haven't stopped. We have kept working on it because we firmly believe it's an incredibly valuable experience for all our students, whether they end up doing the job of their dream during their work experience week, or whether they actually find out important information about what they want to do or what they don't want to do. After so many years, we know that successful work experience involves some preparation and some planning, and this is why we run this evening, so we can give you and get students and parents all the information you need to know to make sure that students can make the best of their work experience. So this presentation is being recorded, so if you need to leave at any point, that's absolutely fine. If you have some members of the family you would like to make it available for, that's absolutely fine to do that later. We also have a Q&A which you can use. We will answer you directly if we can, or we'll make sure that the presentation covers some of your questions. I will now hand over to Julia for the next bit.
Thank you. Okay, hopefully you can all hear me okay. If I could have the first slide, brilliant. So good evening everybody, and thank you for coming along to this presentation. As Mr. Collett says, my name is Julia and I'm here with my colleague Kate, and what we're going to do is just get you to start thinking about your work experience and also go through the different processes with you. Now, as you can see from that first slide there, you're all due to go out on work experience on the 10th of July for a week, and that's 10th of July next year. Now, here we are, the 13th of October, and you're probably thinking, crikey, you know, that's however many months away. But as Mr. Corrett's just said, the reason for this is because there is an awful lot of work that goes into setting up these placements for you. And also, we do need you to sort of meet certain deadlines with paperwork and things like that. Thank you. Okay, so Education Business Partnership, or EBP, who are we? Some of you may already have attended some workshops and things that our other team puts together. But we are an education based charity located over in Newbury. And as you can see from there, next year will actually be our 30th anniversary. So we are a very well established company over in West Berkshire. We've got a very wide network of businesses that we can try and call upon. And we don't just work with secondary schools, but we also do work with primary schools and colleges, both across the Thames Valley, and we've also started working with a school in Oxfordshire over in the last couple of years. And another number for you there, this last academic year, so 21-22, we placed over 1,200 students on work experience. Okay, next slide, please. So just again, a bit more information about us. So we run different workshops. There is another team at the EBP, and they run things for work-related programs. So things such as interview skills, CV preparation, financial awareness workshops, things like that. So between the two teams, we really do try and get as many students prepared for their next step after you know, education, whether that be going into higher education, further education, or indeed the world of work. But this evening we are all about work experience. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so some of you might be sat there thinking, well, why do I have to go out on work experience? Can't I just have the week in school? I've been doing the job for a very long time, and I just want to echo again what Mr. Collett said. And actually, you are very lucky having this opportunity. We obviously can't take away, the education opportunities that you're given within school. But going out on work experience will help you to develop certain skills that actually just being in a classroom doesn't give you those opportunities. So it will give you the opportunity to sort of gain an understanding of a particular type of job or work that you're interested in. And also it gives you an opportunity to develop those all-important employability, or sometimes they're called soft skills. And that is things such as independence. So, for example, at the moment, you might get a lift into school, which is absolutely fine. But when you're going out on your work experience and when you're completing your forms, have a think about, would you actually be able to use local public transport? So that would help to develop your independence. Communication skills is something that most students, when we ask them to do feedback, say that being out of the familiarity of school, away from your friends, that sort of thing, that really does help to develop your communication skills. And also work experience gives you an opportunity to apply what you're actually learning in the classroom, and makes you realise that actually maths, written English work, things like that, project work, it does all go on in the the general world of work. So there is a link between what you're learning in the classroom and the work environment. As I've said, it might help you to discover you've got skills that you didn't even know that you had. And also it is actually work experience, a very valuable thing to put on personal statements, job applications, apprenticeship applications. Employers really do put a lot of value on going out on work experience. We also do have students that are very lucky, not all students, but some students that are offered apprenticeships, Saturday jobs, and work in the future on the back of their work experience. So it really is, like I say, a very valuable thing for you to do. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So there are two main ways for you to get your work experience. And the first one is for you to actually try and get your own placement. Okay, now this is really a very good way for you to get a placement, particularly if you've got a known contact, so family or friend, neighbour, or like I say, somebody that you know in a company that you would be interested in getting your placement at. Okay, we carry out the pre-placement checks on those for you. If you can't get a known placement, then we will try and get a placement for you. Now, it's really important at this stage just to remind you that we are still, unfortunately, in the grips of COVID. And as Mr. Collett said earlier as well, there is still a lot of companies that are working from home and doing hybrid working. So it may well be that, an office isn't manned all week. So we are still struggling with certain types of placements, particularly those in office environments such as law, finance, and just general office as well. So do please bear in mind when you are filling your application forms. And another area that for year 10s is pretty nigh on impossible to get a placement in is medical environments, and also the civilian forces, so things like police force, fire brigade, and paramedics. Again, they are pretty much impossible. I mean, obviously, if you've got a contact that says, oh yeah, that's fine, you can go and work with them, then please do use that contact. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so thinking about, thank you, all the different ways, those 2 different ways for you to get a placement. Think about what interests you. Are there any sort of businesses and sectors that do interest you? We go out and do pre-placement checks, and I must admit it's great actually. You get to see behind the scenes in so many different types of companies. So if you've sort of wondered, well, what goes on in a supermarket to get all that food out on the shelves, it's not actually just, you know, as straightforward as you think. They do stock rotation, different stock ordering systems, things like that. So even if, you know, like I say, you're only in year 10, even if there isn't anything at this particular moment that you think you want to do in the future, just think about your interests and are there any jobs and sectors that you would be interested in and having a look at. Have you already got some real good strengths? Are you do you love being around people? Are you a real good communicator? So in that case, something like customer service in a shop or in a hotel or a cafe where you're actually dealing with people. School placements, they're all really good if you are a very sociable person and like being in a busy environment. The other thing to think of is actually that might fill you with dread and you'd much rather be in a quieter environment. So again, have a think about that. I'll go over it again in more detail in a minute, but think about different places that you might be able to get to. You know, have you got a relative that maybe lives a bit further afield that does a job that you could perhaps go and stay with them and have a look at, you know, behind the scenes in their workplace. Okay, thank you. Next slide. So finding a known placement, okay, like I said, this needs to be through a known contact, so family, friends, neighbours, etc. Or in fact, if you want to use your own initiative and there is something really particular that you want to look at, please do, you know, do some research and go ahead and contact those companies. The only thing I do need to make you aware of is we would carry out all the pre-placement checks inside Berkshire and Oxfordshire for you, and if they are of low risk. But if your placement is outside of Berkshire and Oxfordshire, there may well be a cost that we get passed by the agency that is going to do that visit for you. And we would then pass that on to school. Now, we can certainly find out for you beforehand what those costs are going to be, and they do vary quite considerably. I've known them to come in at sort of £25–30, but also as high as £85–90, depending on where your placement is going to be. But like I say, if your own placement is within Berkshire and Oxfordshire, then we would cover those visits for you. Another thing to think about on an own placement is that we can only sanction an own placement if the employer has got full employer liability insurance cover. Okay, so right at the beginning of this process, if you are asking somebody to take you, please make sure that they have got that insurance cover. If they've only got public liability, you won't actually be covered to do any work for them. If you got injured or broke some equipment, something like that, you won't be covered. Okay, now the own placement form needs to go to the employer that has said that they will take you for the placement. Parents, guardians and students fill in some of that form, and then the majority of the form is actually completed by the employer that has said they will take you. Okay, so you send it off, get it back, and then submit it into school, and then we then pick that up for you. Now, if you are trying to get an own placement, you must please also complete one of our standard application forms. Okay, so if you're doing an own placement, there are 2 forms for you to complete. Now, the reason we ask you to do that standard form is because very occasionally an own placement might fall through. Okay, and we get a call from the employer and they say, look, we're really sorry for, certain circumstances, they can no longer take you on that own placement. Now, obviously, we would let school know, but then what we can do is start to find you another placement using the information that you've completed on that general application form. Okay, so please, 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 can you help Mr. Sy, because she will be chasing all these forms. If it's an own placement, we need both forms from you. Okay, and like I've already said, with the own placement, we would carry out those pre-placement checks for you. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is a slide that tells you about that standard application form. So basically, all students need to complete this form, and you will also be given a set of guidelines to help you fill the form in. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the sections on the form for you, but basically there's a box on there where we ask you to tell us some of your interests, because if we can't actually get you a placement in one of these sort of general sectors that you've requested, we could maybe try and relate your work experience placement to one of your interests. On the second page of the application form, there are 3 boxes that we ask you to put your choices in. And if we could ask you to please try and make those as different as possible, because then again, it will open up more opportunities for you. Obviously, if at this stage you already know you want to go in, for example, to be a teacher in the future, and you want to have, a relevant childcare or primary school placement, then that's fine, as long as you, put on your application form, and you'll see again on the box where you put your choices, there's a box where you can actually put why you're interested in those choices. Now, the very important locations box, okay, you'll see on the form that we've listed some general areas where you should be able to get to from being at the Willink School. And we also ask you, please, to sort of put how you can get there. So whether it's using bus or train, a lift, parental lift, or whether you're going to walk or cycle. And again, that really helps us. So if you've put Reading, but you don't put how you can get there, then we'll be coming back to school, asking if they can check you with if it's by lift, so you might be able to get to sort of more areas in the general Reading location. So that is a really important section for you to complete, please. Now, there's also a box on there where we ask for medical information. Now, that's not for us, being nosy. We don't pass it on to the employer, but we do need to know this information so that we can place you appropriately. So if you've got allergies, or if you have problems with sort of physical mobility, so maybe you can't manage lots of stairs, something like that, then we would actually make sure that we don't place you somewhere that would be detrimental to your medical information, your medical condition. However, we do ask you, please, when you get to start your placement, or when you do meet the employer, that you do let them know about your conditions. And finally, on this slide, please try and be realistic about the types of employers that are in our area. Okay, you would be amazed at some of the choices that we get on application forms, and then they would say something like, I remember one year we had somebody asking, they want to go into the Merchant Navy, but they could only actually walk into the centre of Newbury. And again, that just slows down and restricts the options that we have for you. So please do think about that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so also on the application form is a box where we ask parents and guardians, we ask you to sign that, please. Now, that signature is very, very important, because that is the signature that says to us, yes, please, go ahead, we agree to the placement choices and the locations that have been ticked, the geographical locations that have been ticked on the form. Now, if you submit a form that isn't signed, it will be sent back to you. So again, it could slow down these processes. Now, if you get your forms into school as soon as possible, please, and we would like all standard application forms to be returned to school so that they can be sent to us by week commencing the 7th of November. So it's not a difficult form to complete at all, but you do just need to give some thought to it. So you have actually got half term to do that. We're asking for all own placement forms to be back into school by the week commencing the 14th of November. So again, it's really handy you've got half term to try and get these sorted out. However, we do know from experience, sometimes there can be a delay in getting the forms back from employers. So as long as you write on your standard application form, you make it very clear on there that you are trying to get an own placement, then that's fine. Just send that standard application form in, and then Mr. Sy and I will be in contact with each other very regularly, and we can chase those own placement forms up with you. Now, sometimes we do find that we do need just to spend a few minutes and interview individual students. That might be that, you know, when we get your forms in, we think, no, we know we're not going to get what you've asked for. Excuse me. So we would then actually have a quick chat with you and see if we can get some more choices from you. And again, as with the own placements, we would actually undertake the pre-placement checks for you. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm now going to hand you over to Kate, who's going to take you through the second part of the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Julia. Good evening, everyone. So I get the cheerful bit to talk about to start with. So COVID, obviously COVID is still out there. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. But what we do know is, unfortunately, as Julia alluded to earlier, there are reduced placement opportunities due to the sort of ongoing effect of COVID, and also the fact that the working environment for a lot of people has changed. A lot of people are hybrid working or working from home, so therefore, as Julia said, there are reduced placement opportunities in certain sectors, particularly those sort of office-based sectors. We do need to just be aware if anything does change that placements could get cancelled at the last minute by either party. So obviously, you know, whether that's the student themselves unfortunately contracting COVID and not being able to go, or whether that's maybe the employer has an outbreak and then doesn't have enough staff to supervise the student. Obviously, you know, we will try and do everything we can in that situation to get the student something else at the last minute, but that's not always possible. But just be aware there might be some last minute changes, but we're really keeping everything crossed that they will be as minimal as possible. Thank you. Next slide. That's it. Okay, so just want to talk now a little bit more about the pre-placement checks. So we conduct pre-placement checks for all the employers that the students go to. The purpose of these is to check that the setting is appropriate and safe for the student. We talk to the employer about the work experience. We talk to them about what the student's going to be doing. So it's a really good opportunity for the employer to sort of have that real thought about what they're going to be doing with the student for the week. We do a sort of health and safety check. We make sure that they've got all the relevant insurances in place. So key one being the employer's liability insurance that we've already mentioned. And we do ask that employers undertake a risk assessment that takes into account a young person in the workplace. Okay, so in terms of planning and preparation, so now we're talking a little bit sort of nearer the time. So roughly a month before students go out on placement, students should be issued with a placement description and a summary of the role. So that will come via the school. All students will receive all the information they need really to start the placement. So they'll have their start and finish times, what they need to wear, the name of their supervisor, name and address of the company, and also a short job description of what they're going to be doing while they're on the placement. It's just worth noting at this point that obviously this is work experience. Normally the hours are not the same as school hours, unless of course you're working in a school. But even then, you know, it could be slightly longer hours than you're used to, but it will be a maximum of 8 hours a day, because those are the rules for this age group. They can work a maximum of 8 hours a day, but it may well be a sort of 9 till 5, 8 till 4, something like that. So I think the students will be quite tired after a longer day, possibly. But the really key thing, so once these details come through, like I say, roughly a month before the placement, the key thing is all students must make contact with their employer. Now, this can be ideally a phone call. If that's not possible, send an email. It's not always easy to get hold of certain employers on the phone if they're busy, but please make that initial contact. It's the opportunity for the employer to ask a little bit more about you if they've got any questions. Equally, if you have any questions about the placement that haven't been answered with the placement description, and just to have that first touch point, introduction. Occasionally employers will ask for a student to go on site in advance for a quick chat or a show round. Some employers even take it that they do the health and safety briefing, for example, in that first meeting, so that you don't waste time when you go in your first day. You can go and get straight into the job. So it really does vary, but parents, if you could really support the students making contact with employers. It's quite a nerve-wracking thing to do for some young people if it's not something they're used to doing, sort of picking up the phone to an unknown adult, but it really, really is vitally important. And we have actually lost placements in the past at the 11th hour if a student hasn't managed to make contact with an employer when the employer has been expecting it. Okay, so then moving on to what to expect during the placement. So first of all, it is, again, work experience. Nobody's expecting you to know anything really about the sector. I know for a lot of students it will be their first time in a workplace, so please just have realistic expectations of the sorts of things you're going to be doing. I mean, I always give the example of a hairdresser. You're not going to be going in the first week cutting somebody's hair for obvious reasons, but you will be doing things like, greeting customers, answering the phone, sweeping up hair, making teas and coffees, general sort of customer service. And you'll be in the environment, most importantly, seeing how the business works, talking to people in the job role, learning from them, and really just observing and soaking in everything that's going on. So students will have a logbook to complete during the week of work experience as well. So this is something where they fill in a little brief sort of diary, if you like, of what they've been doing on a daily basis. They can use it to reflect back on what they've learned during the week, the skills they've developed. And it's really useful for when they come to write CVs and things like that. You can look back at, skills that you demonstrated on the week of work experience and then sort of embed these into your CV. The school staff will endeavour to visit or call at least once during the week, usually around the middle of the week, just to sort of check in, make sure everything's going okay. But obviously we as EBP are there throughout the whole placement as well. So we are that constant contact between school, employer, student. So any issues at all, we are on hand to resolve them. And then after the placement, finally, we do ask that all students complete an online survey, which is anonymous, but it just really helps us going forward in terms of, what students enjoyed or what didn't go so well, if any employers were particularly amazing opportunities to, make sure we use those employers again. So it's really, really useful if you could fill that out for us as well. Okay, so now we've just pulled up, so these are real life students' comments from students who went out on previous work experience years. So I'm not going to read through them all, you can all read them up there on the screen, but I would just draw attention to the comment at the bottom. the fact the student was saying that they went to see the placement's location in advance, I think that is a really good idea. If it's a new place that you've not been to before, to make sure you do a bit of a test run. How are you going to get there? You know, how long does the bus actually take? What, you know, make sure that you're set up so that on the first day, you know, you can get there in good time. You're not feeling stressed about how long the journey is going to be, and that you know exactly where you're going in advance. So I'd say that's really good advice for all students. Okay, and then equally we've got some real life employers comments. So I think the key thing I would pull from this is probably the bottom one again, the students' attitude. So like I said, no employer is going to expect the students to go in and know anything necessarily about the workplace, but I think the key thing that will come across really strongly is attitude. So a really positive attitude, a willingness to learn, motivated, curious, ask lots of questions, and just be really enthusiastic, and I think you won't go far wrong. Okay, so this is coming to the end of the presentation now. Just wanted to say to everyone out there, obviously we've got a huge number of employers on our books, but we're always looking for new employers. So if anyone sat there today at home thinking, well, actually, you know, I work for a company that may be able to support and take some work experience students on, please do contact us through the school email address. They will pass that information on to us and we'll get in touch with you, even if it's just, you know, not necessarily a commitment, just I'd like to find out more about what's involved, I'm thinking about taking part, then that would be really, really brilliant if there was anyone out there who could support us going forward. Then next, it was just to ask if anyone had any questions. So you can either pop questions in the chat if you've got any.
I don't think we've got any question at this stage, but obviously we are able to answer any of your questions in the next few weeks. I just wanted to hand over to our career leader, Ms. Desai, who had a couple of things to add, I believe.
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to introduce myself to you all. I am Mr. Desai. I am the careers lead and I'm on hand 5 days a week to help students with any of their work experience queries. With making placement calls, so when students have to contact their employers, what we have found is a slight clash between timings from when parents can support students calling the placements in terms of when they're home from work. So what I've done in the past 2 years is invited students to come and see me in break times and lunch times, and I can make the calls with them, especially if they're trying to call an educational setting or a nursery or somewhere. So I'm always on hand to help students with those calls because it should be a positive experience for everyone. We don't want it to be frightening. I'm always there in the careers office, which at the moment is in the library, so students can always pop in and ask any questions. Similarly, if any parents or carers have got any questions about the process, or if you've got any concerns, or if you feel that you don't have information on something, please do email me. It's just careers at the normal Willink email address. It's on these slides as well. If you'd like me to call you back, please just leave your phone number and I'll call you as soon as I can. There's no questions we won't be able to help with, and just really want it to be a positive experience and one that's not too stressful for anybody. We would really like those white pre-16 experience forms back as soon as possible. So these are the forms that you help your students fill in at home. They're the ones where you make the 3 choices about the different placements that you might be interested in and the areas that you can get to, because the sooner we get those ones back, the sooner I can pass them on to tutors who can add in their part, and then the sooner I can get them back to the EBP, which means the Willink School will get in there first with all of the placements as opposed to any other schools who might be looking for placements at the same time. So it'd be great to have those back as soon as possible. But again, any questions, if your student loses the form, email me. I've got electronic copies of everything. Tutors have got the form packs ready to go. So your student should be coming home either tomorrow or very early next week with the white pre-application placement form. There's a pink form in there, which is the own placement form, and then there's a student and parent information pack attached, and there is one for every student. But we do know that students sometimes mislay things, so just a quick email to me and I can send you as many copies as you might need. I don't think there's anything else I need to say at this time, but please do email me or call. You can get me through the main school number, they'll put you through, and if you've got any questions or anything doesn't quite make sense, just drop me an email or call and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Claire, Kate, and Julia. We hope you find the evening very informative. And yeah, we wish you the best work experience possible. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening.